Hey Alex, how you doing?
Can you hear me?
Here we go. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
All right.
I just got my computer fixed.
All right. Just like new?
Just like new, they replaced the whole keyboard and the trackpad and everything.
Okay.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, Mayor.
So we'll probably need to get you a mic or something in the future. Because
You can't really hear me too well?
Yeah, your voice is very soft from the mic on your computer. I don't know. Must be
I
the
wonder
mic.
if I can. Let me see if I can change the output. Mic.
What do we call the budget document that I can look it up digitally and print a copy? 2020, 21, or 22 budget?
2021, 22. Yeah.
Budget document?
Mhm.
I don't know. Oh.
So your slide is the third slide after town clerk. So
Yes,
we'll
I saw that.
do town management, town clerk, and then communication. So I'm gonna give Candace's presentation because she's out sick today. So
Oh no. Okay. So you'll go twice and then it'll be me.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. No problem.
high level, a couple minutes. That's all you need.
Yeah, and I figured I'd just reference what we talked about in the communications. And
It is 3:30 right now. I'd like to call this budget workshop of the Carefree Council to order on this Tuesday, April 13th, 2001. The roll call, I think you just did it, Gary. We're showing everyone with the exception of Cheryl. And item number one is a workshop to discuss the fiscal year 2021 through 22 budget, which John and I were just talking, we're here together, is an absolutely outstanding and excellent summary. We learned things reading it that we didn't know. So thank you, Gary. And if you and the others might take us through it.
Absolutely, Mayor. Hopefully you each can see the slideshow in front of you right now. Everybody see the slideshow?
Yes.
Yes.
And if I can ask everybody just to mute their mics, and then later on, as we're going through the presentation, don't forget to unmute your mic, the respective speakers. So every spring we go through this budget process. We start off with a couple of budget workshops. Here's Cheryl. With the council to review with them at a high level the respective needs of the organization. And then we drill down into the weeds at our next budget workshop and further answer any questions. So just to back up, as most of us know, a budget is essentially a forecast of the respective revenues and a plan of how those revenues are to be expended over the course of the next fiscal year. Our fiscal years in local government start on July 1st and end on June 30th. So our new fiscal year will start on July 1st. And in anticipation of that, we start our budget process in early January. I'll go through that in a little bit. But the budget determines the service levels for the next year and a list of priorities and a proposal for capital improvements for the upcoming fiscal year. To essentially start off this budget process this year, we actually started a little bit earlier with a council work plan. I'd like to continue this process over the next couple of years and revisit this work plan to see how we're performing and to gain some metrics of performance for the organization. But in identifying the work plan, we identified 4 pillars, also called core tasks: quality, community development, infrastructure management, economic development and financial stability, and communication marketing and community engagement. And we also had some work plans presented to you relatively recently with economic development and communication. In the near future, when we hire our town engineer, we'll have a work plan associated with infrastructure. And we will also have information coming to you in the general plan update that Stacy will be working on towards the end of this upcoming fiscal year and into the following fiscal year. And there'll be a lot of things that will flow out of that general plan update that impact both planning and zoning, economic development, and building safety. So quite a bit of work in front of us, but we're focused on each one of those pillars. And that's some of the topics that we'll discuss with you today through the respective department heads. The process, once again, started in early January. I discussed with the various department heads that they needed to start evaluating their workloads, the trends, policy and regulatory changes, which might impact the budget this upcoming fiscal year. And I actually sent them a notice in early November to start thinking through this, because this whole process is changing. As the mayor alluded to, I changed the budget from a line item budget this year to a policy-based budget. And in doing so, there's a lot of narrative that supplemented those line item budgets. So it describes essentially the purpose of each department, the workload associated with each department, some metrics of each department, and some deliverables of those departments. And we'll go through some of that stuff today. But in doing that and informing that narrative, I started that process with staff a little bit earlier this year. And we, flowing out of that, had additional discussions, both organically and formally, January, February, and early March. In February and March, the town also receives annual adjustments from outside entities such as MCSO and Rural Metro. The county, we have some services that we contract with, for example, animal control. And the state, there's various programs such as the collections through Arizona Department of Revenue that there's an assessment with. So each one of these entities has a fee schedule that's adjusted annually, and we anticipate those annual adjustments in that time frame. Based on that, we also get in that time frame some estimates from the state through the League of Arizona Cities and Towns, the proposed state shared revenue. So it helps us to start defining the trends, start defining the costs, start defining revenues associated with our next fiscal year. And that helps me to then start formulating the budget and the respective costs and revenue lines that you will see in the next few slides. And then also next time we meet on April 27th, as we drill down into the more detailed approach to the budget. That leads us to April, when the budget workshops are typically held. I've been here 19 years, and that's been the typical process as we hold those workshops in April and May. And then May, we typically adopt the bottom line. In June, we have our budget hearing to formalize the adoption of the budget with the fiscal year beginning on July 1st. So that's a little bit about the process and where we are in the process. And once again, this is the first of 4 public meetings, the next one being also a workshop on April 27th at 3:30. The purpose today is to review with the department heads their workload and current needs, and have any of the council members ask any questions about that associated workload. And from there, the outflow is the associated cost to perform their respective duties. We'll have a discussion of prioritizations for the next fiscal year. And the format is meant to be conversational. Obviously, I have quite a bit to present, and the department heads have quite a bit to present. But we want to have a conversation with the council members. So if you do have a question, unmute yourself and please ask away, because it helps us to write a better budget when we address the questions up front. So hopefully we can all gain some clarity through these budget workshops and move forward in identifying the goals for the next fiscal year. So moving forward with our organizational structure, we have a relatively flat organizational structure, a core staff of 16 once we hire the town engineer. Right now, we have 15. We have essentially 5 departments with divisions within those departments. And I will be going from left to right, and the department heads will be discussing their respective roles, trends within their departments, and anticipated cost or special projects that might need additional attention or focus over the balance of this next fiscal year. But beginning with public safety, I started meeting with the Public Safety Advisory Committee. We had our first meeting last week. It was a very good meeting. It was an introductory meeting. We have our next meeting May 12th, essentially revisiting our contract with Rural Metro and the evolving circumstances with automatic aid and what Cave Creek may or may not do with automatic aid. So we're listening to that conversation. We will be meeting with folks in Cave Creek to better understand the direction that they're taking and design a path for Carefree in the future, because what they do will certainly impact our level of service. So we're trying to reconcile that with our expiring contract with Rural Metro, and that's the first phase of the discussion with the Public Safety Committee. The next phase, which will be later on this fall, we'll be evaluating the service level for MCSO. There's quite a bit of conversation within the community about calming and slowing traffic within the community and how to efficiently do that, and also increase the patrols within the neighborhoods. And certainly there's been talk in the past about the use of photo radar to supplement the traffic patrol and then redeploy the officers within the neighborhoods both during the day and night. That would be probably the more efficient way of doing it. But we'll have a conversation both with Rural Metro and the vendor that represents, for the most part, all the traffic enforcement, photo traffic enforcement within the state now, called Vera Mobility. They are in the process of buying Redflex, so they will be the entity that represents, for the most part, all communities that have photo radar within their jurisdiction. So we'll have a conversation with that. All those meetings are being broadcast through Zoom and recorded, so members of the public can review what's being discussed there. And eventually there'll be a report and recommendations made by this grassroots committee made up of residents, just like everybody on council, to illustrate what recommendations they would make or changes they would make to the level of service in Carefree. So that's what's going on with public safety. As far as this next fiscal year, we're looking at a 2.5% increase on Rural Metro's contract per the contract. And that would bring us up to about 1.55 million. There are some additional costs associated with the operation of the firehouse. That brings it up to about $1.625 million for the overall fire and emergency service program with Rural Metro. Our public safety contract with MCSO is going up 4%. That will bring it to about $475,000. They have a cost recovery model. So at any point during the course of the year, we can increase or decrease that service level. And that's certainly one of the conversation points that the Public Safety Advisory Committee will have, is what level of service will be suitable for Carefree looking into the future. So next up is
join the meeting.
Administrative services. And there's essentially several different divisions of administrative services. One is town management, which I oversee. There's the town clerk, there's communication, there's risk management and attorney. We both contract, obviously, for our town attorney and risk management through Southwest Risk. Each one of those are going up a little bit, about 2 to 3% a year. So we have covered those increases within those respective contracts. As far as town management, the role of the town management is obviously to oversee the daily operation of the town, to administer all contracts of the town, submit and manage municipal permits such as our MS4 requirements that are reviewed annually by the state, and frequently communicate with council members, citizens, development interests, other regulatory and planning development agencies. So being the point of contact for the organization, and helping assisting staff in all policy and regulations as they're modified over time. Workload over this past year, obviously we changed our auditor, and we had a RFQ out, and the new auditor did an excellent job and presented to you this past season. So we'll continue working with them. Obviously, permitting perspective, MS4, quite a bit of workload associated with that. Hopefully when we hire our new town engineer, they will be assuming that. As far as infrastructure coordination, the biggest work effort was associated with the water acquisition. That was a very time-consuming process, and now we're transitioning into the construction and financing part of that equation, and that will still take some time working with the water company and working through the logistics of that. We do have in our budget under capital projects, street pavement maintenance program, and we're looking at a section of Cave Creek Road by Town Hall to do a new surface on mill and overlay. That is, that portion of the road is alligatoring, and there's some structural compromises. We'll need to put some new asphalt down. So probably 1.5 inch to 2 inch mill of that section of street from Carefree Drive all the way over to Mule Train. And then by Sky Ranch Airport, we're getting some longitudinal cracking, and that we can simply do some crack fill and then a micro seal over top of that to save some money. So we're looking at programming that into the next fiscal year under capital projects. That had a heavy hand in that process. That hopefully I can pass on to the town engineer when we get them on board. And certainly anytime we have these projects and hire consultants, whether it's a request for proposal or request for qualification, there's an extensive process in producing those documents, and I've been involved with that. Also, as I discussed earlier, working with the Public Safety Advisory Committee, I'll be the point person on staff, working with them and helping to write that report and to formalize the recommendations that the committee will be making to town council in a two-phase process. This fall would be the recommendation for fire emergency services. And then sometime later on this winter, we'll make some recommendations for any changes to the MCSO contract and any consideration for photo radar. And those will be, once again, fully transparent discussions and recommendations to the town council, and then the town council can choose how they want to implement those recommendations. As far as budget impacts, every contract that we have essentially has an inflationary increase of anywhere between 1.5% to about 3% per year. So we're going to continue to see those increases to our respective contracts, and a lot of the contracts fall under the town management department or division. So all those costs are incorporated within my division. And then some special projects. Our gardens are being loved by the public and loved by our furry four-legged friends. And over time, they're as a result of this heavy use, we're seeing a lot of damage from the pets, and we're never going to stop the pets from using that. I think we should celebrate the pets coming in to the town center and our residents enjoying the beauty of the park. But at the same time, due to their respective use and what they typically do when they come into the garden, it is causing a lot of damage, a lot of rust to the metal poles, the light fixtures. We have stones that are regularly kicked into the sidewalks, and we need to replenish the stones. We have vegetation that has died. We need to start re-energizing and pouring a little bit more money into the gardens to replenish these areas that have received this heavy use and damage as a result. We also have some vandalism that's occurring. We've had vandalism to our restrooms. We have vandalism to some of the cactus We have things that have been scribbled upon. We have walls that have been damaged. And there comes a point in time where we need security cameras. We need to be a little bit more sophisticated in our approach to secure our assets out there. And so I've started investigating different systems, and most of this is done at night. So we need security cameras that can effectively be used at night, to use the ambient light, spread that light so it actually looks like day on the other side of the camera, and identify those folks that are damaging our gardens so we can stop that from occurring. So I've been investigating those options, and they run anywhere between $25,000 to $35,000 plus installation. So part of the capital project budget will look at the implementation of some type of security camera system over the next fiscal year to secure our assets. So that's a little bit about the town management division. Candace is out ill, so let me take her respective slide and expand upon that. The town clerk also acts as our treasurer. There's two folks involved in the town clerk division, and that also includes Jim Keene, who is the deputy clerk and town accountant. And they do a lot of things. Not only do they're not only the custodian of the public records, but election officials. They safeguard all the money. They invest it in our different funds. They support the town administrator and staff as needed. They're responsible for all the payroll processing, responsible for IT and our network security and maintenance of our server administration. They oversee compliance of the audit, and that's an extensive process that Jim is involved with, and that takes several months just to assemble the data for the auditors to go through. So that's a very time-consuming process. And other communities, they have a whole department that deals with that. We just have Jim, so it's a very tedious process. But Jim has been doing it for 19 years, and we're thankful that he's continuing to do it, and hopefully for another 19 years. I'm getting a laugh from Jim. And then we also, he oversees the audits of the water company and the courts itself. Those are separate audits that are in addition to the town audits. So we actually have 3 separate audits. The workload essentially continue on with the banking and wire transfers and the state budget reports, which is a whole nother process that Jim needs to go through and file with the Auditor General our respective budget, and then any reporting on a monthly basis of anything over $5,000 is downloaded into a state database. So there's a lot of reporting associated with requirements through the state that Jim is involved with. There's the coordination of employee benefits, and that really rings true this past year, in which we saw a significant change in staff, and we welcome Alex and Steve and Carrie, and who else am I forgetting? And Dennis, and hopefully a future town engineer. So we had a lot of people that moved on to retirement or other greener pastures, and we have new folks coming in. And so there's a process associated with employing those folks and getting them on board. They also provide support to our town attorney. There's a lot of documentation that flows through the town, and ensuring that that is in proper form, and the recordation occurs if that is required, flows through the town clerk's office. They have state mandated documentation and things of historical value and retention programs that they have to oversee. And these are things that don't go on in the public light, but behind the scenes on a daily basis. Candace is involved with these things, and Jim is involved with these things. So a lot of work behind the scenes that they're involved with. Weekly accounts payable, that's something that's important to every staff member, but it's something that takes some time to process everybody's timesheets. And then the monthly accounts and reconciliation and council financial reports. That's something important to point out. That's something that Jim generates for the council every month. It takes a lot of time to go through that. And sometimes they're late because when the month closes relative to the council meeting, there's just not enough time to generate those reports. But it's part of our transparent process in reporting where we are from a financial perspective. And we celebrate that, we're proud of that, but it does take a significant amount of time to produce that documentation. From a budget perspective, we're looking at updating our accounting software, and Jim has budgeted, I think, about $15,000 for an update to that accounting software, which is outdated, and that new accounting software would fit our new budget format a lot better. So it's been kind of troublesome to mold this new budget process with the old accounting software. So hopefully this would help to facilitate a better transition in the future. So that's a little bit about the town clerk, my division, and any questions thus far on those two divisions?
Yeah, I got a question on the town engineer. What's your timeline on that? Obviously, you're going to program it into your budget, and how big a hit is that, and when are we going to have that person?
So we went out to and advertised that position. We started with the interview process, and during that interview process, both of our finalists were hired away by other municipalities. So I'm confident that we're going down the right path with our finalists. Unfortunately, there were a couple other jurisdictions that were quick to hire them away. So we're starting over again with that process, and we have that advertisement out. Town engineers go for a premium these days, and we're looking at a salary of $105,000 with benefits. So that is the going rate in the market area, and that is the low end of it. So we are in a pool, a very competitive pool to hire engineers. Now, if we're not successful in hiring an engineer, the next thought would be to contract out that with a third party. So we'll have to consider that if we aren't successful, but we just re-advertised that position, and we'll see what type of candidates that we get. So my hope is that we can hire somebody sometime in late May, early June, and start them preparing the capital project plan and do some of the other administrative tasks that right now other staff are doing, including myself. So hopefully that answers your question.
Gary, I have a question for you on that. I know that you had mentioned a third party, hiring a third party, and I know that there would be some cost involved with this other option, but had you considered maybe contracting with a recruiter that has a pool of candidates that could place, a few at our doorstep?
Certainly that's an option. There's costs associated with that.
Yeah.
Most smaller municipalities typically do it on their own. It's certainly an option that we can explore down the road if we're not successful with this second wave of interviews. So
Potentially cost us a lot more if we get the wrong hire though too. So, but
yes.
anyway, I understand. So,
Yep.
all right, thank you.
Yep. So
Gary,
yes.
what type of engineer do you hire for that type of work? A civil engineer, or what type do they use?
Yes, a civil engineer. Yes. Any other questions? All
Gary,
right.
this is Les. I don't have a question, but just to let you know, you're probably 60% of the time on, and then we get internet is unstable on ours. So if John and I are quiet, it may be we can't get in touch with you, but this is excellent so far.
Okay. All right, let's move on to communications, and obviously that's a new role. Alex is here somewhere, and she's going to quickly go through her respective slide here.
Hello, yes, I'm going to go through this quickly since we just went over our communications and community engagement plan. This is kind of a general watered down version of it. So essentially, some of the roles that I am doing is in construction and developing a new communications plan and communication strategies for our organization, communicating with residents, business owners, potential future residents and or visitors, and then internally our communications within our organization, trying to improve all those avenues of communication individually. Some of those tools and strategies are newsletters between our residents and us, an internal newsletter within our organization, and a third newsletter to exclusively the business owners, as well as expanding on our social presence and our digital presence online, whether that's through our website, carefree.org, visit carefree.com, or any of our multiple social media platforms. Overall, just enhancing our digital presence, improving imagery, and anything has to do with our town as far as a branded digital presence. We are in the midst of implementing the visitor center, getting that up and running. Part of that is getting new materials in, furnishing the building itself to try to make it warm and welcoming. That way it invites people in, and we can get a better communication to how to do what to do in our community or what businesses to go to, things like that. Some of the budget impacts within those tools and strategies would be marketing within social medias. There are small costs with that, as well as updating our website with Civic Plus, and then any collateral material or tangible material you can actually hang up in our gardens or throughout our town. Those are some of the bigger items that would impact our budget.
All right, thank you, Alex. Any questions for Alex?
I do, Alex, Steve here. Since coming on board with respect to the business owners, have you received some feedback from them with respect to our newsletter to the community?
I think, I don't know if I'm losing connection or if I only heard part of the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me
That's
now?
okay. Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay, pardon me. I was just asking, since you started with the newsletters and so forth, the digital format, have we received some constructive commentary from our business owners with respect to that new program of ours?
So it's not fully implemented. I've sent out a couple newsletters to our businesses using the old system we did use. I noticed a lot of bounce back emails. Emails are out of date. We don't have updated records of current email address, so on. So I've been extending this conversation in person and thinking about strategizing different ways to get updated information, contact information from the businesses. And I've really built a great relationship with a lot of our central businesses and getting good feedback. So moving forward, constructing and implementing this strategy of a better and more efficient newsletter to the businesses. And that's what I'm working on right now, is how to get a contact information updated and at a, in a better system than we had previous. So definitely a better response. And it seems as though adding a layer of transparency puts their minds at ease, that they have constant conversations and constant communication with someone that represents the town. I've seen that there's a great response to that.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else? All right, well, switch gears a bit and go into our community development department, which is made up of planning and zoning, building safety, code enforcement, and economic development. Steve has an 8-hour presentation, but I asked him to boil it down to 2 or 3 minutes. So just let the council know. But we'll begin with Stacy, who will go through planning and zoning.
Thank you, Gary. I always like to look back at that work plan document that Gary presented when we first started. We talk about a vision that relates to premier distinct communities, high quality, experience-based retail. To me, as the planning and zoning department, we're all about delivering this vision in the built environment sense. So we believe we play a really important role. A lot of times we're kind of the department that represents what everybody sees. So how do we do this? We do this with our general plan. Gary's mentioned that we're going to be updating that document. That's state statute mandated, but it's actually a really good document for us. It's kind of the blueprint of how Carefree wants to develop. It talks about what and where we want things to be. Then we also have our zoning ordinance, and that's a really important document too, along with our town code and subdivision regulations. That starts to show how that built environment is going to evolve. And it's part of the framework of sort of supporting that overall vision. All of this together goes also hand in hand with economic development. We really are, it's nice to have an economic development director on board to sort of support what the community development goals or the planning and zoning goals are in our department. I do meet with a lot of not just myself, but Samantha and I, we meet with our planning and zoning commissioners, a lot of you council members, citizens, applicants. We're here to talk about general development opportunities in Carefree. If it's something from a shopping center all the way down to somebody wants to do a new casita on their property. So we get a lot of those types of questions and walk-ins and phone calls. And so, we're happy and, we support sort of that cause, so to speak. So that kind of plays into a lot of our reviews that we do. We do have a lot of zoning cases. Those zoning cases are things like anywhere from general plan amendments, rezones, site plans, things that sometimes you as council members see, sometimes you don't. But again, all of these are tied together in terms of how we're going to grow. And we also basically work closely with the building department. We do right-of-way permits. And so we're out in the field a lot. We're in the office a lot. We're just here to support any kinds of questions relating to Carefree and its physical environment. Along with that, my planning clerk, or our planning clerk, Samantha, she does a really important job. We actually have our archives, just as Gary was talking about the town's archives. We have our own, and it's critical documentation that needs to be managed and saved in a safe manner. We also create maps that the town needs in terms of any kind of information that might be important to the public. So with that said, our workload last year was tremendous. I think all of the departments feel that way. I have the numbers up there. It's funny when I hear 20 zoning applications. I worked in larger municipalities, but 20 zoning applications, including text amendments, that's a lot for a two-man department. Also, again, as I mentioned, we work closely with the building department. We were involved in not all of the permit reviews, but at least 162 of them, and just making sure they comply with the zoning ordinance. We performed many inspections, a lot of them related to either building permits, zoning cases, right-of-way meetings, and a lot of miscellaneous things. We get walk-ins from the public, phone calls, and people want to talk about some constraints on their properties. So if it has to do with the built environment, we're involved, and we're not only for the current, but we also do the long-range future outlook of the town. So the things that are impacting the planning and zoning department's budget this year, probably more so than usual, but it's really time. Well, for one, as I mentioned, we have our general plan update. That is something that takes an outside consultant to support. It's a pretty involved process. It's a very involved process, not pretty involved. Also, it's time to update our zoning ordinance. Our zoning ordinance has been a really great document. In fact, I think Gary was instrumental in sort of bringing that forward maybe 15 years ago. And it's worked really well, but just based on how things are changing, it could be technology related. It could just be, we've got lots left over that have, certain kinds of constraints. We have different types of commercial opportunities, and we just have to make sure that we have an ordinance that maintains that vision, but also works for the development community as well. We are looking to invest in the planning archives, as I mentioned. Right now, we just keep them on site. We also keep them down in our public works warehouse. Those really aren't good places to keep paper documents. And lastly, we are looking to put our ordinance online, just not on our webpage, similar to the town code. What's so important and what we hear a lot is that people can't find the zoning orders, they can't find that information. And this is a time where that should be easy to do. So that's really what we do together in community development. So.
Any questions for Stacy?
Yes, Stacy, this is John. So when do you expect the general plan update process to begin?
I think we're going to be looking to hire a consultant at the end of this year. I think we're going to begin the process in 2023. You know, it's about an 18-month process, and then we do need to bring it forward to the town for a vote by the public, by the residents, excuse me.
So when you say the end of this year, you mean like in May 2021 or 22?
What I mean is it's for the upcoming fiscal year. We're going to look to hire somebody towards the end of the year, but it will be for next year's, for the budget that we're looking at right now.
Okay. And then when we talk about updating the zoning ordinance, so the bulk of that work, will that fall to the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Well, it will actually go to, it goes to Planning and Zoning for recommendation to you, to Town Council. You know, we've been managing updates along the way. It's just, however, we're at a point where we need to come back and sort of look at this holistically so that we're supporting this general plan update, which is going to kind of give us a framework of how we want development to occur. And then we will have the zoning ordinance that kind of supports how to implement that. But that is a document that does go before Town Council for final approval.
So the Planning and Zoning Ordinance updates, will that occur at the same time as the general plan updates, or will it follow the general plan?
I think they're going to happen concurrently. There's some things that we can address without having the general plan approved. Just things that are related to, for example, signage. Our signage ordinance is outdated. Does that really, you know, the general plan doesn't really get into the weeds of what should signs look like. It probably talks more about that we want to have sort of an easy sort of communication through town, things like that. So there's not, the general plan doesn't have to set all of the goals. We still have things that we need to address with the zoning ordinance that aren't necessarily tied into the general plan specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Stacy,
Hey,
it's
hang on. Oh, sorry.
No.
I was just trying to unmute myself. The general plan,
Mhm.
is that the Baker study or is it a separate thing? I'm getting all these
Mhm.
documents mixed up. So what exactly is this and why are we updating it now?
Well, it is not the Baker plan. It's true. A lot of towns have a lot of different policy documents. We actually don't have that many compared to some municipalities, but a lot of times we'll have a policy document that's specific to an area. So that's what the Baker plan is. That's specific to town center. The
Okay,
general plan is actually a document that's mandated by the state. And the state also requires its update to occur every 10 years. So they're interrelated, but they're separate types of documents. They're development type documents, but they're two separate, there's two separate entities. The general plan, as I mentioned, that is, we are required to update that. The Baker study, and I'm sure Steve will talk about this, it's almost sort of, it's a nice, as we're looking at a redevelopment plan, it's building upon that Baker study. I would say a sort of a similar correlation is the general plan is that policy document that the zoning ordinance kind of builds upon. It's kind of like its next step. But yes, so those are two different documents. The general plan is, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, it's kind of the blueprint for Carefree of how we want to develop. It tells us where is the best place for commercial, where is the best place for higher density housing, where is the best place for lower density housing. It kind of gives us a framework. And then we follow up with zoning and development applications that then have to relate and have to coincide with that general plan. Because let's say somebody wants to come in and we want something to be a commercial development and somebody wants to do a multifamily complex. Well, we look to the general plan and say, No, that's not how we see the framework of carefree growing. We'd rather see that happen someplace else. So it's kind of that 30,000 view looking down on kind of how carefree wants to sort of the lay of the land, so to speak.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Oh, good.
I think there was another
Stacy, I was
question.
just curious, with respect to, you had mentioned all the documentation and drawings, and I can certainly relate to that in my previous profession. Do do we digitize all that when we're done with it, or do we have a service that does that, or do we do that at all? Thank you.
That's a good question, Stephen. We're in the process of doing that. We've been doing that mostly in-house, and most recently, Samantha does a lot for the planning and zoning department. Carrie does a lot for the building department, and I think also helps out Candace with scanning documents. When we get to that point, I think that's something that might be part of in the administration budget, but we're trying to get our documents digitized for sure. It's a big undertaking because it hasn't been done. With the planning and zoning department, it's a little more complicated too, because we've got plans that go 24 by 36, all the way down to your normal 8.5 by 11 page sizes. So it's quite an undertaking, but step one is Samantha has organized all of our documents. We have them we have them boxed and ready to just store safely for then kind of our next step is then to continue to digitize that information. We do it now with our current work. It's just more the historic work that we don't have digitized yet.
One more, do we store all these documents in is there a fireproof area of the office, or what do we do?
Very few documents are in a fireproof containment. The one thing that the planning and zoning department does have fireproof are our zoning minutes. But other than that, no, everything is, we have it stored in our filing systems, but no, it's not fireproof. And that's the great desire of wanting to move. In fact, our budget request relates to renting space in StoreQuest so that we have it in a safe and it's protected in just that manner.
All right, any other questions for Stacy?
I have one, and it's just to confirm, this is Les. Stacy, you're talking about starting the general plan amendment in earnest in July of 22. Is that correct?
July, yes, probably started, you're right. And John, I apologize if I wasn't clear about that answer. That's correct. It's, we'll have it in our budget. We probably won't start the process until the end of that year, but yes, it is part of that fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so we can all tell that Stacy's gonna be very busy over the next couple fiscal years.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff happening, and there's a lot of stuff happening today. And that's where building safety comes in. I can't remember a time where Mike was so busy. It had to be 10 plus years ago, prior to the Great Recession. But we have 23 new homes that have been permitted, 5 or 6 that are just starting the permit process. One of them is an 11,000 square foot home that recently Mike was alerted about. So we have quite a bit of development. As we all know, the housing market is on fire. And as a result, there's a lot of folks poking around in Carefree, looking at buying some of the more mature homes, let's say, in Carefree, and repositioning them. So there's going to be significant reinvestment in existing homes, and that's going to keep Mike pretty busy. So don't want to steal any thunder from Mike. Mike's sitting at the end of the table here in the red shirt. So Mike, I'll hand the baton off to you.
Thank you, Gary. So in case somebody doesn't really know who I am, Michael Tibbet. I'm the chief building official for the town of Carefree, and I run the building safety department. My role is to perform inspections, do plan reviews, issue building permits, meet with developers, homeowners, contractors, architects, and resolve building code issues. I provide safeguards to the public and property related to construction. My workload this year is pretty heavy. Conducted 2,834 inspections, permitted over 55,000 square feet of remodeled work and 83,000 square feet of new buildings. Performed 917 site inspections, 217 plan reviews, approved 23 new single-family residents, and 5 new homes are in the review process right now. And we just got the 6th one today, which is the 11,000 plus square foot home. Continue to inspect town center development like the Hampton Inn and the View Townhomes. The Hampton Inn is quite a challenge for the building safety department. And then budget impacts, professional services. That's with Brown and Associates, more or less to help with inspections, just mainly because of workload. Homes 10 years ago versus today are much more complex. So it's much more time consuming. Probably in 2004, 2005, I was doing 3 times as many homes as I'm doing now, but I feel like I'm more overloaded with work right now than I was, back in those years. Let's see. I got a proposal in for a new work vehicle. My Ford Escape's getting close to 10 years old, and it has 160,000 miles on it. So hopefully we can get that done this year.
All right. Any questions for Mike?
So I have a comment and a question. So in my mind, building permit fees should cover our building permit inspection costs.
Yes.
We shouldn't make money, but we shouldn't lose money. So what I heard you say is that the inspection process has become much more complex. The structures themselves are much more complicated. So have our building permit fees increased accordingly?
Well, I looked at it a couple of years ago, and to be quite honest, we're probably some of the highest permit fees in the valley. That doesn't mean that we still cannot raise them. I feel that, Paradise Valley and some parts of Scottsdale might see homes like what we have, but you can't compare Litchfield Park with Carefree, as far as permit fees and stuff, but we're very competitive with Paradise Valley and Scottsdale. But that's not to say that, we can't look at that again down the road, but at the time we were the highest.
Okay. Yes, I don't think it should be a profit center, but I think it should be fair.
That is true, and that is always the goal. Right now we're in a strange situation where we've got the Hampton Inn. We've made close to 100 site stops there. That's not inspections, that's just stops, 100. We're probably somewhere in the 300 number as far as inspections out there. And as you can see, we're not even halfway done with the Hampton Inn. So it is eating up a lot of time and a lot of money.
Okay, well, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mike, Steve here, quick question. When you do perform an inspection, is that a flat fee per inspection that we impose like on the Hampton Inn, or is there is that something we do as a community and we cover the cost?
Yeah, so the way it works is when somebody brings in a project or a home or whatever the case may be, it's based on valuation, and we can take a stated valuation or we can take a calculated based on square footage. The way we did the Hampton is off of a square footage. Through the International Code Council, they come up with a dollar figure that is a fair and reasonable dollar per square foot to build throughout the country for the most part. And there is some factors that can change that slightly, but so we did calculate it off of that. And, you know, I think we're in great shape. It's more or less right now, we're having a difficult time with the contractor more than anything else. So it's looking a little better right now, and hopefully they're going to get on board. I think at some point in time, they thought that, you know, they might just be able to confuse you and hope that you don't see things. But I don't run a building department like that. I make sure everything's done to code to the best of my ability and to the best of the ability of my inspectors. And so that's been the challenge out there. I mean, but we're working through it. And I think now the contractor finally is realizing that they got to do it. They got to do it right, or they're just going to be prolonged even further. So.
All right. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns with the Building Safety Division? All right. Let's move on. And I appreciate all the questions coming our way. That's what we wanted. There you go. All right, Steve, 2 minutes.
2 minutes, come on, are you kidding me? We've already had a lot of conversations about economic development, and as it relates, we just had the whole revitalization update. And Stacy kind of hit the nail on the head. You know, we're going to be working together a lot as staff, and we're a small staff, and so there's going to be a lot of crossover. And so when you look at economic development, you know, in the past, you know, a lot of people think it's business development and marketing, but really it encompasses a lot more than that. When you look at really what we try to accomplish is the full complement of the marketing, the 4 Ps, and one of those is product development. And so right now we're doing a lot of product development type activities, which includes, you know, looking at like things, creating a redevelopment area, putting tools in place that will allow us to really create a built environment, which is something that I know Stacy's working on. This is why we're working very closely on a lot of things, to get that built environment to a place that, you know, we as a community want that built environment to look like. And so it starts off with, you know, plans and ideas and thoughts and concepts. And from there, we can take those ideas, plans and concepts and go to a really good outreach and marketing program, which is, you know, it's easier to sell something when everybody's on the same page and we have a really solid product to offer. So so that's when you look at some of the budget impacts over the next couple of years are going to be really related, and you're going to see a lot of crossover between Stacy and I think in those activities. And so some of these things will be planning related, and a lot of these things will actually feed directly into that general plan update and the zoning updates. And then, you know, so that's a big component of it, but not to say that we're not going to look at how we do marketing and outreach. And so that's where the crossover with someone like Alex really comes into play. And so, you know, having communications isn't really just about communications and communications with businesses and residents, but it's also how do we communicate with the public and consumers and everything else. And so that's going to be a large part. So if you look at the two dynamics that are going to be happening, it's going to be a balance between this product development and this balance between business development, outreach, and marketing. And so from a budget perspective, that's where a lot of those costs are going to go. But I would say the bulk of that is going to be, you know, looking at how we engage in the product development side up front. And as we move forward, we're going to start looking at things, you know, in the future that are going to have a return on investment. So when we start looking at revitalization, the investment that we put into these plans will eventually turn into development, and that development will have return on investment back onto the community. And so that's how we're going to measure all this success. And so as budget impacts go, you know, we look at we evaluate these things up front about how these plans that we're going to put together are going to affect development. And as part of that, we're going to have economic updates that will validate our, you know, capability and the absorptions that we can have, whether it's commercial or residential, that support, you know, what we want to accomplish. And then we can also use those things to further evaluate the success that we've had. So that's where we're at right now and where we're headed. And so the budget requests you're going to see are going to be more about building our tools, specifically, doing the redevelopment area plan and updating some of our economic analysis and information.
Okay, any questions for Steve?
I just want to compliment him on being concise and fast.
You're welcome. Do you know how much money?
The advantage of taking us through the bulk of his presentation a short time ago, but thank you, Steve.
Do you know how much money ended up in the jar on my desk? It was awesome.
And I apologize to Steve. Some of those bullets were legacy bullets left over from previous year presentation. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, gotta fix that on the slide. So, okay, last but not least in community development is code enforcement. And one of the new team members, Dennis Randolph, is here. Dennis replaced Kevin Stuckey, who retired in January, and it's been a smooth transition between Kevin and Dennis, and we've received a number of compliments. When Dennis goes out, in the past when Kevin went out, it's never a positive thing to get a complaint, but you want somebody that has a calming demeanor, calming force out in the community that helps to educate residents on the various issues and the complaints that we face. And it's never fun to tell a resident no or something needs to be changed. And that's Dennis's task, and he's done a great job in transitioning into the position, and we received many compliments from residents working with him to correct situations. So let me pass the baton on to Kevin, who will talk a little bit about his department. So, did I say Dennis?
I'm Dennis
Or
Randolph.
Kevin? Okay, Kevin, sorry. There we go.
I've got big shoes to fill from Kevin's tenure. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. Thanks, Gary. Part is a code enforcement officer. Part of my duties are investigate complaints. Court duties include court security and bailiff. I've just recently been certified as a courtroom security officer. Process business license and vendor certificates. What I've done in that respect is take it upon myself to go through the list that we've had, and just to familiarize myself and ensure that some of these business didn't fall to COVID. Working with Steve on that, and just making sure that we're accounting for all that we have. Also, I assist with the front office and whatever duties that anybody else needs me to do. I'm always available. The workload previous has been 350 business licenses, 450 vendor certificates, and Kevin had previously conducted over 200 investigations. From the work that I've performed for 90 days, I can that is pretty much keeping in track with what we see here on these numbers. I do look for follow-ups. I do a lot of follow-ups after an issue has been rectified, so that I can maintain and bring those to closure. Short and sweet, my budget impact is very small, with a replacement of a 10-year-old vehicle with approximately 120,000 miles.
All right. Any questions for Dennis?
Just welcome aboard, Dennis. Thank you.
Not to be confused with Kevin.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
All right.
We had that straight, Gary, but it seemed to be a struggle.
All right. Moving on to Public Works, and Tony alluded to this position earlier in my presentation here. We're looking to hire a town engineer. We're out to advertise that position again, and that position will close at the end of April, and interviews in May, with the hopes that we can hire somebody on towards the end of May, early June. Essentially, the town engineer's role, and this used to be a full-time position with the town. And the Great Recession hit, and we pivoted and looked at how to take the tasks associated with this position and divvy them up amongst our existing staff. And we never hired up this position since the Great Recession. So they oversee government compliance. Most communities have a town engineer who is a civil engineer. They manage the public infrastructure and assets, and they coordinate the workload, in our case, with our public works staff that focus on our facilities and rights of way. So our streets and the 4 guys that Travis oversees in our public works department. As far as the workload, I alluded to municipal separate stormwater system, MS4 as they call it, which is part of the Clean Water Act, and all communities are required in the metropolitan area to comply with the requirements, and it's one size fits all. And so the requirements that apply to Phoenix also apply to Little Old Carefree. And so it takes quite a bit of work in documenting all the compliance issues that we face on a daily, weekly, monthly, and annual basis, and providing them the respective reports through the ADEQ portal. So that would be assumed by the town engineer in the future. We also have other regulatory requirements through dust control permitting, drainage repairs that need to be done over time, and then street repairs on occasion when it makes more sense for our public works staff to do it. Now we would have a town engineer who would help to engineer the respective design solution. They will also conduct grading and drainage inspections and review plans for compliance issues. And what we're looking for in this civil engineer is somebody who can do a lot of things. And you heard from many of the other staff members, and they wear many hats. And in many other communities, there's whole departments behind this one position within the town of Carefree. So you heard from Stacy about the general plan. Well, she also goes out and does site inspections, landscape inspections, and part of what she's doing is also grading inspection. So she's assuming some of those responsibilities. We need an engineer to assume those and take that burden off of Stacy. Once again, this position will assume that responsibility. Also, right-of-way permits. We processed approximately 50 right-of-way permits last year, mainly utilities entering our right-of-way. Right now, you might see, for example, on Tom Darlington, a number of traffic barricades that have been in alignment along the shoulder. Cox Communication is coming in there and they're pulling a new line through their conduit. Well, it requires a traffic control plan. We have to go out there and inspect and ensure what they're doing is per plan. It requires a lot of time. We need a position dedicated to this. As the area grows and as infrastructure is replaced over time, we need somebody there that's reviewing this and making sure that the town's interests are protected. Also, managing the street projects, and this is key for this position, is it takes a lot of time to manage these street projects when we issue a RFP to do a street maintenance project. When the town center was done, for example, it was done in the middle of the night when the businesses were closed and it didn't adversely impact anybody traveling to the post office. Well, guess what? When it's done in the middle of the night, somebody has to be out here to inspect the job. Who was out here in the middle of the night from 1 to 4 a.m.? Me. Who had a meeting at 8 o'clock the next morning? Me. I mean, we can't keep this up. We need a engineer dedicated to this, to oversee this, to put these projects together and manage these projects. So that's the importance of the talent engineer and the workload associated with that. In addition, as our infrastructure ages, for example, we have approximately 300 culverts throughout the community. Travis goes out and inspects those culverts on a quarterly basis to see if there's sedimentation in there, see if there's overgrowth, desert brush that's intruding in that culvert, and then he cleans that out. There's wing walls that help to pressurize that culvert to push the water through so that the sedimentation in that culvert can be flushed through during those storm events and it doesn't clog up. those are instrumental in the operation of those culverts, and those need to be better managed, inspected, and then repaired over time. So that would be another aspect of the town engineer position is putting those capital projects together, reviewing these assets, and then fundamentally putting a plan together. We will need a vehicle for this engineer in the future so that they can do their job. We will also have consulting services in support of this position as we start up this position. So putting together an updated street maintenance program, doing some GPS and GIS work to benchmark the location of some of our assets and understand the state of those assets, and then some new software to support this position. So that's what we're looking at as far as the town engineer and their role or workload and the respective impacts on the budget. Any question with that respective position?
Gary, Steve?
Yes.
When we provide a vehicle for one of our departments, do we buy those vehicles or do we lease them?
We typically buy those vehicles, and we have not leased them in the past. And those are purchased through a state contract. So we get them at a reduced cost to us. So the state goes through a public process, and then we purchase under that process. All right. Any other questions, thoughts?
Yeah, I got a quick question. How do you see the interface and interaction between the town engineer and the water company?
Greg right now acts as the town engineer on a temporary basis. There will be cross training between Greg and the new town engineer for a portion of time. How much time, I don't know. But I see them working together. I obviously, we're a small community, and the town engineer will be also overseeing the Public Works Department. The Public Works Department is located right next to the water company. I see the position having office space over here in Town Hall, as well as an office space and a presence over at Public Works. And as a result, I see a close alignment and coordination between this engineer and the water department, and more specifically Greg. So I see fluid communication back and forth.
Gary, Les, I just want to thank you and Greg for all the extra work that you two in particular have done in this whole area. It's very necessary. You both have done an outstanding job, and I know it's over and above what all else you are trying to get accomplished. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, all right. So moving on to the Public Works Department, we have Travis, who helps oversee the facilities and right away. And you know, it's let's see, there he is. You know, this is important because this is something that people see on a daily basis. That they see Travis, they see the crew that works with him to pick up the trash on the side of the streets, to grade the shoulders on the side of the streets, to address brush within the neighborhood, to clear sight distances of vehicles. And so this is what I call curb appeal. It's what has meaning to a lot of our residents because they see them out there on a daily basis. So this is a very, very important department, and I thank Travis and the team that works with him. They do a tremendous job, and they wear many hats, and they do many different things, as Travis is gonna go over right now.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Yeah, my name is Travis Johnson. I'm pretty sure I know all of you. But just go over our role with the town. Like Gary said, we wear many hats, do a lot of different things. The biggest thing for us is just maintaining the town. I mean, we maintain the right of ways, maintaining the facilities. You know, maintaining the right of ways includes, you know, blading our shoulders, trimming all the trees on our shoulders, making sure everybody can see all the corners, installing traffic signs and maintaining those signs. It's a really big chore. There's a lot of signs around here. We assist with any special events in town, manage and maintain all of our equipment, you know, all of our tractors, do all of our oil changes on trucks and dump trucks. As far as our workload goes, this year, been a really busy one for us. One of the best things we did last year was buy a new brush chipper to help us out with all of our maintaining the right of ways. And it's literally cut our time in half as far as getting through neighborhoods, getting through major right of ways. Then we came in and thinned out all the canopies in the gardens itself, which was a major uptaking. And it took us a couple weeks just to get through that and get that maintained. But now people can see through our gardens. They're always happy, saying thank you. We also came through and repainted all the walls in the gardens, the buildings, all the short walls. We built the new facility to store our golf cart and all of our chairs for our concerts, which opened up room in our green room that we could go in now, and we converted that into an office / visitor center and just a big meeting space. We also treated the amphitheater pavers themselves and got the splash pad repainted, all the walls, the floor for that, and got it ready and got it opened, most importantly, on time. Repaired all the lights and electrical outlets in the gardens, and maintaining the lights in the gardens seems impossible because there's always lights. Gary knows. Seems like every time we get them all working, a week later, there's 3 or 4 that don't work. Which brings up, that's a big budget impact for us. We're constantly working on getting our lights working. We want everybody to feel safe as they're walking through our gardens at night. And without Jeff handling that for us, it'd be tough to keep up with. Another big budget impact is, again, in the gardens and maintaining the gardens from the pet damage that we get. We seem to get a lot of damaged dogs urinating on poles and garbage cans, and that causes rust. So we're always trying to stay up on that, repainting them, and the electrical outlets in the gardens. Jeff and I have been trying to raise those and put covers on them so that we can try and stay ahead of that, and it's a tough one. And another big one that's coming up this year is replacing street signs in town. We've got a lot of them that are showing their age and need to be replaced, and that's going to be a big chore for us.
All right, so that gives you a flavor of a little bit about what Travis and his team has worked on this past year, and then some of the projects that they're going to tackle this next fiscal year. Any questions for Travis?
I do. Hi, Travis. Vince here. Hey, so first of all, I wanted to thank you. I know that some of the stuff that you and your team do, might feel like it goes unappreciated or mundane at times. But I mean, I was walking up and down Tom Darlington today alone, and I picked up 4 24-ounce beer cans. I didn't even know they made them that big, and I picked them up on the side of the road. So I can just imagine what you guys go through on Mondays when you're out there doing that. But question I have is that extra shed, that golf cart shed that you guys built, that's some skilled labor there. How much do you think we saved by not hiring out to build that thing and you guys doing it?
I don't really have a dollar amount that we saved, but we saved a lot having us do it. And
yeah,
it was a big saver. It's a great one.
Well, and that's yeah. So thank you. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So
thank you, Travis. Excellent work and an excellent presentation.
Oh, thank you.
All right. So that's the Public Works Department. Now, moving on, last but not least, we have our courts and our court administrator, Carol. Carol, you there?
Carol wrote in the chat that she does not have a microphone.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Can she call in on the phone?
She's still on, so if she hears us, then she.
Okay. All right. Well, let me just go through the courts. As we all know, we have a new administration over at the court, and the new presiding judge that was appointed last month, Tara Paris-Gondola. She is going to be a great transition, similar to the transition between Kevin and Dennis. I think we have a great transition between Judge Olahan and Judge Paris Gondola. They're very capable judges that we have presiding over our court. And Tara has been pro tem judge in the past for our court, so I'm quite pleased that she threw her hat in the ring, and she is now our new presiding judge. The judge oversees the staff on the court, and Carol is our court administrator. Carol has been working for us about 3 months now. She replaced Jennifer, who went to work for the city of Tempe to be their deputy administrator. So we do hire quality people, and this is validation. I mean, to be the deputy administrator for a mid-sized community such as Tempe is a compliment to the staff and the capabilities of folks that work in our team. So Carol, thank you for all that you're doing and assisting Judge Paris Gondola make a good, smooth transition into the seat of the presiding judge for Carefree. As typical municipal courts, we have a consolidated court that serves both the communities of Carefree and Cave Creek. The town of Carefree staffs that court. It's in the facilities of the town of Cave Creek. It's at the Cave Creek Town Hall. And that is our staff that supports that respective court and processes the respective cases. They typically have civil and criminal misdemeanor citations. Any more significant citations typically go down to Superior Court. They typically respond to public inquiries. They maintain court records pursuant to the administrative office of the court. And there's a whole filing system associated with case management called AJAX, which is very, very complex. And you almost need a PhD to navigate it. But thankfully, we have people such as Carol that can help to navigate it. They also distribute the monies received in accordance to state statute. And that's, part of our audit to ensure that these funds are coming in and go to the respective entities. And approximately 2/3 of the funds that come in go to the state and go to the county to offset the judicial system within the state. So the town of Carefree does not receive 100% of those funds that come into the court system. The workload, there's an increase in citations. Anytime there's a change in MCSO leadership with a commander, we see a kick up in the number of citations. So we've experienced that with the new commander that came into the district a little bit over 6 months ago. We see legislative changes and increased inquiries as a result of that. We see operations are difficult with limited staff, and sometimes we only have 2 staff members there, a administrative officer and then the deputy administrator. And when one's sick, one's on vacation, it's sometimes difficult to manage the workload, but they have done a great job in balancing that. There are some new forms that they have to submit, and there are some minimal increases to operational costs, such as postage. And that's the only thing that they requested was an increase in postage of about $1,000 for this next fiscal year. So a very, very efficient court, a court that I think deserves a lot of accolades for servicing 2 communities, Carefree and Cave Creek. I have never heard of any complaints coming out of our consolidated court, and that's a tribute to the staff and our presiding judges and the service that they provide. So that being said, any questions with the consolidated court? All right.
Wrote in the chat that the court is doing well, and there's a large volume of citations that they've received due to Bike Week.
Excuse me?
She wrote in the chat that the court's doing well, but there's been a large volume of incoming citations due to Bike Week.
Okay. Yeah, so last weekend, there was a special patrol, DUI patrol by MCSO. You might have seen their DUI van within the town hall parking lot. We make that available when they do these special patrols for Bike Week. And as a result, there were a number of arrests due to folks driving under the influence. So there are obviously some citations that will be processed through this court associated with Bike Week. So yes, thank you.
Will we get
Right.
statistics on those DUIs and citations?
Say that again, sorry. Yeah.
Will we get statistics on those DUIs and other citations?
Certainly, they take a while to process within the court, but over time, yes, we will get data. Typically, you receive on a monthly basis data from MCSO, their monthly report. In that, incrementally, you'll see the outflow of the cases as a result of those DUIs. It may not be processed all in 1 month. It might be a series of months. Those cases are kind of complex, and typically, when you have DUIs, you have folks that hire attorneys, and as a result, there is a process associated with that. So that's why there might be a delay in the processing of that and the impacts. But I would say within 6 to 8 months, we can have a better barometer from the courts as far as the data. MCSO can give us real lifetime of the number of citations, the type of citations they issued. But as far as the court processing of them, that takes a little bit more time. Any other questions? All right. All right. So that's kind of an update of the various departments at a very high level. At our April 27th meeting, two weeks from this afternoon, we will get down into the weeds and go through some numbers. I will also be submitting to you within the next week the draft of our new budget, which is approaching, I think, 85 pages now. But it's a great narrative of the town, of each department, of the various funds, and how the funds flow through the town. So I would encourage everybody to read that. There was quite a bit of effort put into that. So I think the narrative gives meaning to our respective budget and the numbers behind it. Focus now real quickly on capital projects. That's separate from the annual operation. It's essentially a separate pot of money. And we have our reserve fund, our capital reserve fund. And that has been increasing over time. And right now we have approximately a little bit over $9 million in those capital reserves. We also have a rainy day fund of about $2.5 million. Those funds are there to support maintaining our existing infrastructure, not so much as adding new infrastructure, but maintaining it. So providing street maintenance projects, improving the safety of our crosswalks, replacing signage. In the case of security cameras, it's trying to maintain those assets within the gardens to reduce the vandalism. Pet repairs, we've touched upon that a couple times in the presentation. I included a interesting picture here, and it's of an old fire hydrant that looks like Snoopy. One of the thoughts that we had is taking some of the decommissioned fire hydrants that the water company might have and doing a play on those fire hydrants and painting them like a dog and getting an artist involved with that and setting them out in the garden and creating relief stations through the gardens to better direct the dogs to certain locations and perhaps doing a little patch of turf around it to make it a little bit more comfortable. I think that would help to reduce it. I think most of us have pets, and if you walk your dog, they typically go where the other dogs go. That would certainly be a location that would focus it away from our respective assets and hope to mitigate the damage in the garden. So thinking of creative ways of dealing with how our gardens are being loved to death by our friendly four-legged friends. So that's one thought I had. So we'll look into doing something like that over the next fiscal year. Town center revitalization initiatives. Steve touched upon some of the things that we're looking to do. There might be things that come to us in the future, partnerships, private public partnerships that we can cultivate together, and there might be some funding there through that redevelopment plan, that revitalization plan that Steve is working on, that allows us to invest in these things. So setting some money aside for that to incentivize the private sector and ensure that we get more viable businesses within the town center that complement our tax base. And then the water consolidation project, I don't know if there'll be any additional things that we might have to front associated with the construction projects, but we have to reserve a slot in there. Those funds will be replenished once those revenue bonds come in there, but we have to slide out some money in association with that, just in case we have to front some money early on in the process. So as far as capital projects, that's what we're looking at over the balance of this next fiscal year, investing in. And first and foremost is making these crosswalks safer and starting that as soon as possible. And also when the town engineer comes on board, hopefully sooner rather than later, trying to replace that section of asphalt that has some structural compromises along Cave Creek Road. That being said, any questions that the council might have with capital projects? All right, last slide. So this is the next steps. Once again, alluded to our next meeting, April 27th. We'll give you more down and dirty with the revenues and expenses. So I'll give you a presentation on the forecasted revenues and how those revenues will be invested over the balance of the next fiscal year. You got a high level understanding of what each department is doing and some of the tasks that they're focused on over the balance of this next fiscal year, and also looking maybe a year or two down the road. And then May 4th is when the bottom line is adopted. That's when our expenditure limit for the next fiscal year is defined. It's called the tentative budget. And then June 1st is the overall budget hearing in which we adopt the budget. And July 1st is when the new fiscal year begins. So that concludes this initial workshop. If there's any questions, concerns, thoughts from the council, now's the time to vet them. Otherwise, we are done.
I just want to say thank you. It was presented in a very logical and easy manner for us to understand. And I like this format. So thank you.
And hopefully one day soon we could do all these meetings in person because it's a lot easier on my end. It's
yeah.
I would think so. Gary and all, thank you very much.
Agreed. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gary.
Everybody, it was great to hear from all the staff and get a flavor for what they're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you and have a good evening.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye. We'll adjourn this meeting.